Being recorded.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Troy, your host. We are live and recording.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for your patience. We did have a prolonged business hearing today, but it is 3:21 p.m. on Tuesday, the 9th. I will call this meeting to order. If you'll all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you for that. Attorney Garcia, do we have certification of the agenda today?
You do. Reviewed all matters on this. Proper posting and publication has been performed, and the commissioners have jurisdiction over all items.
Okay, thank you very much. And do any commissioners have disclosures for items on this agenda today?
I have none, thank you.
No, sir.
And I have none either. With that, we'll move to item 2, our land use meeting agenda items. There are no items for land use today, so we'll move on to item 3, which is our public hearing agenda items. Beginning with item 3A, a proposed amendment to Section 15 Plan Development of the Douglas County Zoning Resolution, project file DR 2022-007. My understanding is that this is to be continued to a later date, and we have Matt Jacobowski presenting for staff.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Matt Jacobowski for Planning Services staff. That is correct. The DR 2022-007, Section 15, proposed amendment to the Plan Development section of the zoning resolution is recommended by staff after the Planning Commission hearing. There was a work session in which the board and staff discussed the public comments that occurred at the Planning Commission on April 17th. Staff recommends that the public hearing for this be remanded back to the Planning Commission, and then also this actual item heard by the board continued. In the memo that was provided to the board, staff provided some dates that could be possible dates for a remand, which could be June 5th of the Planning Commission and June 27th for the board. So continuing from today to the June 27th for the board. So we wanted to recommend those dates.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. Any questions for staff?
I have none.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion then.
You know, I know we met on this, guys, but I got to tell you, I'm sick of the whole thing. This was supposed to be very simple administrative changes to our zoning resolution, and that's not what we got. These are supposed to be things that were going to make it simpler, easier, more clear, and the last thing we have is anything easier or more clear. We have zero clarity. So, if it please the board, I do have a motion to table the proposed amendment to Section 15 Plan Development of the Douglas County Zoning Resolution. Anybody care to challenge me on what table means? I asked for a second.
So let me just go back and ask staff. I mean, we have been talking about this, and it started off very innocuous, and then somehow it ended up in that these changes were going to allow apartment buildings in single-family developments. So if we don't do anything, what is the impact on that to the planning department? Can you answer that question?
And just in the interest of following Robert's rules, I will second that in the interest of decorum and then open it up for discussion and for questions to be answered.
Matt Jacobowski for staff, responding to Commissioner Thomas's question. From staff's perspective, the proposed changes were to provide some clarification, making it easier for staff and applicants to interpret the approval criteria for Section 15. But of course, to this point, we've been using those same approval criteria as applications have gone before the Planning Commission and the board, and staff has prepared staff reports. So in the end, we've been working with the language as has been in place for some time.
Thank you. I just don't want to leave anybody with the interpretation that we were trying to vastly change the zoning regulations and we got caught. Because that's not at all what was going on. It was separating long sentences into short ones And if it's not going to impact the way you do your job, then it's okay with me. I thought we were just trying to do something that helped clarify language, kind of like what we just did in the last hearing, was update something. So I appreciate all the work all of you have done on this for all these months, and it made perfect sense to me.
Okay, so we have a motion to table and a second on the floor. Any further discussion or questions for staff?
I'd like to speak in favor of the motion,
Please.
and thank you for your consideration, Commissioner Thomas, and because indeed you did. I know I am very frustrated because when this was initially presented to us, I quite frankly saw. Well, I was willing to hear the appeals of staff, that the language could be made more simple. Only problem is, we have residents whom are not interpreting it that way. And the reality is, we work for them. And of course, I always appreciate the work of staff, but boy, oh boy, we just did not get this one right. If indeed staff does have the charge from the board to continue to work on language and to bring it forward and to, make our regulatory codes more simple and easier. I just really feel like we took a swing at this one and we just missed by a mile. So I speak in favor of the motion to table.
Well, thank you to my colleagues. Commissioner Thomas, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to say, this isn't going to change anything that what we've already been doing, because what we are going to do wasn't going to change anything we were already doing. Is that right?
Matt Jacobowski for planning staff. The proposed changes were to clarify and make interpretation a little easier as the approval criteria are being reviewed against projects. But again, we've been using the language as has been in place for some time, so that would remain the same if the board chooses to keep it as it is.
Thank you.
So I appreciate the thoughtfulness and input of my colleagues, and share the frustration about perhaps the approach and just ensuring that there's a clear level of understanding from those we serve. I think we did hear very loudly and clearly from those we serve about the consternation and maybe confusion about what was presented before them. I also have every confidence in our staff. I know that you all are tremendous and consummate experts at what you do, and usually, if not always, put every effort into providing us with a memoranda and recommendations that reflect the best interests of the county. So I felt like, and I apologize, the motion from my colleague does catch me a bit off guard as well. I wasn't quite prepared to discuss a motion to table, but since we're here, just trying to think back to the work session where we had the discussion around the proposed changes. And my recollection is that we had, as a board, approved some of those changes, and we're asking for that to go back to the Planning Commission, and that at least from a Board of County Commissioners standpoint, we were okay with those changes as presented. Am I not remembering that right?
Matt Jacobowski for staff. At the work session, there was some discussion of revisions to text, and staff would be, under the board's direction, of course, working to make some of those revisions. So at that work session, there had been some discussion about the contents of the memo, which was to take some additional time for staff to review, come up with some revisions to the text, and then have that go back to the Planning Commission, and of course, to the board later on after the Planning Commission.
Well, and isn't it true that we originally we thought, well, we would bring those recommendations back to the Board of County Commissioners, and it might have been Commissioner Till's suggestion that we remand it to the Planning Commission, I thought, unless that was a different, was that the same work session?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that was the idea. Again, my concern was we were hearing such concerns from our populace that we needed a second look through the Planning Commission to even consider further revision. I guess even that idea has worn out its welcome with me. And because then I have to be honest, my concern then became, once again, meeting a clock deadline that we were going to throw at the calendar and say, by this time it has to be done, for something that still we were receiving feedback that was already rushed. Ergo, my motion today to table. If, obviously staff saw a place where efficiency could be created, where the language could be cleaned up. This by no means is a way to say to staff, don't ever bring that before us again. By all means do, but by tabling, it allows staff to go back to the drawing board, not being under some artificial calendar deadline by the board, but instead to, and then is this really the most important thing we're doing in the county right now? That we have to make sure that this is hitting a timeline and prioritized to hit a timeline. Whereas if we table, it really just kicks it back to staff, take it back under consideration, don't leave it on the front burner, put it on the back burner, give it time, give it consideration, perhaps even additional resident stakeholdering, which, for goodness sakes, we've heard from plenty of people who have an opinion. Perhaps we engage with them and actually get their input on the front end of a new process that we can consider later, instead of, again, remanding to the Planning Commission, where we do need to give a time expectation. And then if we are going to continue, we must throw that date out on the calendar. At this stage of the game, for something that was meant to be a very simple administrative cleanup, Jesus, I've just talked longer than I want to about a simple administrative cleanup, if that's all it really is. So that's why I speak in favor of the motion.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Thomas.
I was just going to say, Commissioner Lane, you were remembering that meeting, right? You talked a lot and gave a lot of suggestions on how this could be clarified so people understood. And so if you still want it to go back to the Planning Commission, I would support you in that.
Well, thank you for that. And I think it'd be my desire that we have some board consensus on some direction here. So I think what I hear both of you saying is changes were appreciated and staff worked hard on it, and maybe more time is necessary to reflect upon those changes. Maybe the difference is the timing consideration. Just from a Robert's Rules standpoint, this isn't postponing indefinitely. It's tabling for further study, right? Am I understanding that right?
Correct.
Okay, so it would continue with staff under the recommendations that we provided in that work session, but we would not be bound by a particular time frame. Am I understanding that right?
So I thought when we made a motion to table, we were killing something.
Well, and then let's just be clear. I just wanted to, it's not postponing indefinitely. We're tabling for further study.
So you're going to take affirmative action on it today and then invite staff to come back and revisit the issue later. So no affirmative action. Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Apologies. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're taking no affirmative action on it today. You're asking staff to do additional work on it and then revisit it as a new issue. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct, because, the other option, and even though, we do have it on our action items checklist, that, we could remand, but, we could also, at this time, we always have the option, approve, deny, table, remand. And then probably a couple others, Jeff, that I haven't just cared to think about. But the bottom line is, we could just deny, in which case, if it's a denial, I would hope staff would take that as it's dead. This is not this is not the intent of my motion. The intent of my motion is table. The process stops. That has started up until now, and it gives staff the opportunity to reprioritize and bring back to the board for further consideration at a later time. That is not designated by the board.
Okay, and let me just ask if Commissioner Thomas is okay with that.
Well, I was going to look up the definition of table, because I know I've sat here and been told that if we table something, it's dead.
It's dead. It's dead, and you're bringing it back as a new issue.
I'm not sure about bringing it back as a new issue, because we've spent how many months on this already? So that was the purpose of continuing this, to go back to the Planning Commission and then come back to us.
Commissioners, if I may, when you table, there's no date certain for another hearing. We will go back and research and do a new study and bring forward with more work sessions and discussions with the Planning Commission if you'd like. Basically, you're resetting the clock. We would have to redo our published notice for the item again when we do schedule hearings to bring it back before you. So yes, in essence, we are going back and bringing forth a revised item to the PD language. Hopefully that's clear. But you're basically, yeah, so we would have those work sessions as part of this study period, if you will.
Okay, so the issue's not dead, but you're just not on the clock. We'll see this again in a work session.
With our full, yep, we'll do the work session, all that process, kind of going back. We'll send it out on referral. We'll have some community meetings if that's what your direction is, kind of for more study. We can definitely handle it that way. By the same token, if you don't want it to go further, that would be the denial, and we could do that and maybe even bring it back as a brand-new topic in several months if you wish to handle it that way.
Well, as one commissioner, I'm not interested in that. I think you've already put far too much effort into this to start from scratch, but...
That's just at your prerogative. I just wanted that to be on the table for you all. So.
Okay, what would the board like to do?
Well, I speak in favor of the motion. Again, if we table, we unplug the timer on when staff has to bring it forward. We decouple our priorities from this issue and allow staff to prioritize it with their regular work. Again, I ask, are we sure this really is, a top priority for the board at the moment? And of course, efficiency, making our code better, more clear, is always a goal. But what's the fire? So, I speak in favor of the motion. Tabling allows it to be kicked back to staff, allow them to prioritize, continue with citizen engagement, particularly those who have expressed their opinions, and bring it back to the board on a timeline that does not interfere with other items before the board.
Okay, and I'm fine with that. That makes sense to me. Any further discussion? Okay.
I just think it's a big waste of time that staff has already done all this work, but
Okay. Well, appreciate that. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I'll say aye. I don't like that, but I'll say aye.
Okay. Aye in favor?
Aye in favor of spending more time on it.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas, and thank you, Commissioner Teal. That does pass 3-0. With that, we'll move to the next item on our public hearing, which is item B, Reata South Preliminary Plan, filing number 1, 6th revision, project file SB 2021-048. Again, Matt Jacobowski presenting for staff.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Matt Jacobowski, representing Planning Services. The item before you is the Reata South Filing Number 1 Preliminary Plan, 6th Revision, project number SB 2021-048. Brad White of 3BI Development is here as applicant. I know he has a team here. They have a presentation after my presentation to describe the project. The applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary plan to subdivide a 154-acre portion of the Reata South Plan Development, also known as Colorado Golf Club, into 22 single-family lots, 1 non-residential lot, and 5 tracts. Lots range from 2.25 acres to 3.25 acres. Per the plan development zoning, horses are allowed on lots 2.5 acres or greater in size. 86 acres of open space are proposed for preservation via a permanent open space easement that will be established by final plat. The intent of the preliminary plan process is to provide an in-depth analysis of the proposed subdivision, including a review of the design considering the ability to obtain water and sanitation, identified geologic hazards, environmentally sensitive areas, wildlife habitat areas, source of required services, vehicular and pedestrian circulation, storm drainage and water quality, relationship to surrounding land uses, and conformance with the master plan. The preliminary plan process begins with the submittal of an application. Following comments by staff, the request is forwarded to referral agencies. At the beginning of the referral period, courtesy notifications of an application in process are sent to abutting landowners. Public notice is provided and the request is heard by the Planning Commission prior to consideration by the Board of County Commissioners. During the process, staff received multiple comments from the public, including additional comments provided in the board packets this past Friday. Comments were mainly from public in the Pinery, Colorado Golf Club, and Hidden Village, which Hidden Village is east of the site. All comments provided objection or concern regarding overdevelopment, impacts on wildlife and wildlife habitat, traffic and access impacts, utility impacts, and nuisance impacts from lots that have horses. Concerns also regard the size and scale of dwellings and the location of the lots that would allow horses. The applicant also completed outreach during the process with nearby property owners and is prepared to address that outreach and the comments that were received. The Planning Commission heard this proposal at a public hearing on April 17th, 2023, and unanimously recommended approval by a vote of 6-0. 4 members of the public spoke at the hearing. 1 spoke in support of the project, given that it was a low-density residential project to be owner-occupied. The others expressed concerns regarding wildlife and wildlife habitat impacts, protection of open space, and site access and traffic. The site shown here is in northeastern Douglas County. The red star represents the approximate location of the property. More specifically, the parcel is located within the southeastern portion of the Reata Plan Development. The Reata Plan Development is outlined in yellow. The site is in the southeastern corner here, outlined in red. The parcel is accessible from Betts Ranch Road. It's surrounded on 2 sides by the Pinery, which you can see west and south. Hidden Village is across to the east. The Kinney Creek floodplain and Kinney Creek Trail within the golf club are located to the north of the site. As background, the plan development was approved in 2000 for a maximum 169 units. Platting on the site followed in 2005 and 2006. The recent 7th, 8th, and 9th plan development amendments increased allowable units within the PD to 255. Specific to this property, the 8th Amendment amended Planning Area 10 from a 6-acre equestrian center to a 22-unit single-family residential planning area. So prior to the 8th Amendment of the plan development, no residential units were allowed within that equestrian area. Secondarily, as part of the 8th Amendment, the Planning Area 12 Equestrian Center planning area was developed, which is within the northeastern corner of the property. The 9th Amendment was completed in 2021 and was administratively approved, which included an amendment to the planning area boundary. Basically, the applicant, as they were proposing and reviewing possible subdivision layouts, ended up moving the planning area a little bit further away from the Pinery. No part of the planning area was increased. In fact, it actually decreased slightly. No additional units resulted from that 9th Amendment. Currently, 214 of the 255 units are platted within the overall plan development. So if this subdivision were to be approved, it would bring the total number of platted residential lots to 236. Before you is the proposed subdivision plan. Residential lots 1 through 22 are accessed by the main entrance on Betts Ranch Road, which is gated. A private road continues to one cul-de-sac and another cul-de-sac. There's an ungated emergency access along the east side of the site. As I discussed, Planning Area 12 includes the pasture area and equestrian center within the northeastern portion of the site. That area would be required to undergo a separate site improvement plan process if an equestrian center proposal ever did come before the county. Building envelopes are proposed on each lot. You can see the square here on this lot just for an example. Pasture area is permitted on horse lots but structures are only allowed within building envelopes, and any barn must be integrated into the massing of the structure. So basically, it would mean that there wouldn't be a separate barn. It would be perhaps attached with a breezeway. It would feel like it's more part of the structure of the house. And again, that's what's allowed in the zoning. Dwellings would also be subject to the design guidelines of the Colorado Golf Club. Proposed tracks are generally for open space and utilities. Approximately 50% of the property is open space. With my pointer here, the open space travels around much of the property. There's open space within the middle of the subdivision as well. The applicant has proposed some trail connections from cul-de-sacs to the existing trail within the golf club. Utility easements are generally proposed along private roads and the front portions of lots. Various drainage, water, and sewer easements are proposed throughout the subdivision. The county, as is standard practice with subdivisions, will accept general purpose utility easements and secondary drainage easements at the time of final plat. As far as getting to the point of the lot layout, the applicant prepared view shed analyses and cross sections as part of its discussion with the neighbors and as part of the comments and concerns that came from the Eighth Amendment process. The applicant can share those during their presentation, but the results of that study were to analyze the topography and how the lots would lay on the land and to get an idea of what the impacts on neighboring properties would be. Following our site photos, this photo shows the Betts Ranch Road frontage of the property from north to south. So Betts Ranch Road being on the left side of the slide, the property in front of you to the right. This photo looks through the middle of the site, also from Betts Ranch Road. Part of the drainage is visible here where you can see the topography change. This shot looks through the southeast corner of the site near the proposed subdivision entrance. It is possible to see some dwellings in the pinery to the south of the property. Finally, this view looks north into the site from Sunridge Hollow Road, which is a road in the pinery that actually touches at a point on the closer to the southeastern portion of the site. The approval standards for a preliminary plan request are set forth in section 403 of the subdivision resolution and listed on this slide. Staff's assessment of the approval standards are discussed in detail within the staff report. Staff has evaluated the preliminary plan in accordance with Article 4 of the Douglas County subdivision resolution. Should the board find that the approval standards for the preliminary plan are met, the following proposed conditions should be considered for inclusion in the motion. Condition number 1, prior to recordation of the final plat, the property shall be approved for acceptance into the Colorado Golf Club Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, Restrictions, and Easements. Condition number 2, during construction activity within the development, the applicant, its successors, and assigns shall take all reasonable care to watch for historic resources, paleontological resources, and other cultural history resources, and shall immediately notify Douglas County and complete appropriate Colorado Office of Archaeology and Historic Preservation data management forms in the event of such discovery. Condition number 3, during construction activity within the development, the applicant, its successors, and assigns shall conduct a burrowing owl study if any earth moving will take place between March 15th and October 31st. Condition 4, technical corrections to the record copy of the preliminary plan exhibit shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And condition number 5, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representative during the public hearing and or agreed to in writing and included in the public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners in approving the application. Therefore, such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's full satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. Section 40508 of the subdivision resolution sets forth the parameters for the board action on preliminary plan requests as noted on this slide. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have on the staff report. Otherwise, Brad White, the applicant, and his team are prepared with a presentation of their own. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Any questions for staff?
I have none.
No questions.
And I have none either. Would the applicant like to go ahead and state your name and where you're from for the record?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Eric Carlson, Foster Graham, Milson and Kalisher, 360 South Garfield Street, Denver, Colorado, 80209. I'd like to start with just a quick introduction of our team here with us today. Brad White of 3BI Development, and Rick Buckton, who's the planner on this matter and also was the original planner of the Colorado Golf Club community. So he has a wealth of background and context and history on this matter. Let me first start with a thank you for your time this afternoon, for your consideration of this application. A thanks to your staff. Matt Jakubowski does a fantastic job. We've worked with him for years. Our firm has been involved on this matter. We were in front of you in 2019 for the 8th Amendment, which of course rezoned this property to permit the 22 residential lots. So it's our great pleasure to be here today to show you what the actual layout looks like of 22 lots on this property. We know this is a property that fits the rural character of the comprehensive plan of this area with large lots. The minimum is 2.25 acres. 56% of the site is preserved open space. That's 86 acres. And of course, just 22 lots. Brad will come up in a minute and show a few more slides that have the design here. And the first is, of course, the 8th Amendment in 2019 was our rezoning to permit residential here. The 9th Amendment, approved administratively in 2021, inverted the design of this property so that the houses were further buffered from the pinery on the west and the south. It increases the total buffer, between the adjacent and nearby homes, and overall just designs this site better. As you know, through the PD process, there's a lot of site planning and design that goes into that rezoning. So of course we've been at this site design for a while, and in terms of our approval criteria today for the preliminary plan, we meet the engineering designs here. We've evaluated the soils, the drainage, the transportation. We know we preserve our natural resources with 86 acres open space. Our emergency service needs are met. There's, of course, no mining activity here. And most importantly, this meets the comprehensive plan with our rural character here in the non-urban Northeast sub-area. So one of the approval criteria, 403.02, is your design elements. So I want Brad to come up and talk through a little bit more. There's even some view shed slides here that just show exactly how this site is designed. It meets the wildlife corridors. It meets the natural kind of drainage and areas of this site. So a lot of thought was put into that. We'll be available for questions. Want Brad to spend a few minutes on site design with you. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. Brad? Welcome.
Brad White. All good? Brad White, Douglas County, 23 years, live in Castle Pines. So Jim Galbraith is the owner. I'm actually the applicant as the developer. Jim was wanting to be here to give a little bit of history on the property. He was one of the original founding members for Colorado Golf Club. He purchased the property originally to build an equestrian facility for his wife and family. Subsequently, he found another property that was already developed down the road. I met Jim in about 2005. We got together on this property in about 2018 and started laying out some concepts for it to say, let's build a property out there. Jim would have liked to have been here tonight or this afternoon, but he's recovering from a heart attack that he had the night before our planning and zoning meeting. So our best wishes are with him currently right now. So I'd like to take you through a little bit of the sequence that Matt was talking about. We did file for the 8th Amendment, which was a completely different PA that we had. The layout was different. And when we started looking at it, we noticed that we weren't really happy with the way the homes were laying out. They were too far down in some of the lower areas. Make sure you have the right. So in some of these lower areas, we were down into some of the flood areas that were down there. So we started looking at the property and said, We want the roads to maintain on the natural topography that's associated with the land. We really wanted to utilize the property the best that we could. So Rick Buckton, who actually designed everything up in the original Colorado Golf Club and did all the home design layouts with regards to there, Rick and I spent multiple hours out on the site, making sure that we maintain the natural topography and flow for all the roads that are associated with our new design and layout. So then we submitted the 9th Amendment to change those boundary line adjustments to get to where we are today. We actually gave a little bit of land back as part of the open space, but our real ultimate design was to increase the buffering, which was right here, in some places as much as 900 feet from the pinery to the back of our lots. So as we started looking at it, we said, you know what, we can probably do a little bit better. So we kept driving through. Matt, are these the buttons that change the slide?
Yeah, the forward arrow will advance the slide.
Okay, all right.
Make a mistake, go back.
Thank you. Thank you. Whoops. So we started looking at the natural topography that was associated with everything. We started looking at Kinney Creek that was flowing down below and said, how can we start to improve everything? There's a natural sewer system that runs through here. It's currently in place that runs right through here. So we said, let's take all that in consideration. We need to start looking at our design studies for habitat corridors, for archaeological, which, by the way, when we did our archaeological study, we did find a arrowhead that was out there on the associated property. We have given that to the Douglas County Historical Museum to be a part of that. So, and there was actually a fire pit that they associated with, which we left in the open space. It sets about right in this area somewhere. So we make sure that we won't touch that at all. So we've left that in place. We're continuing the Kinney Creek Trail that comes along here. We're going to continue the Kinney Creek Trail back up here to connect to the pinery in the corner section of our property. We just, as we just kind of kept looking at it, we said we want the minimal impact that we can to everything that's out there. How do we do it minimally? So we maintained our road structures and our road design so that our cut elements are extremely limited. We're not doing any over excavation on this property. Anytime there's a site improvement, that'll be maintained by the individual builders. So we just decided to take a look at all that. We kept looking at it and saying, how can we increase and make sure that we maintain the stuff that we talked about when we were in planning and zoning? So we went ahead and pre-designed, as Matt had already addressed, the building envelopes, that we would make sure that we would never build on the back side of the property. So if somebody was to put a barn, we told everybody there would never be one back there, so we went ahead and maintained that. We are 100% regulated by the design guidelines that's associated with Colorado Golf Club and their design review committee. So if there is a barn, the massing detail that Matt was referring to is just a connection of the homes between them. It can either be a trellis detail, it can actually be attached, it can be some form of that, but they have to be associated in the same building area as the home in general. We eliminated a lot of our storm details with regards to our roads by maintaining the natural topography that's out there for sheet flow with regards to design elements. We've maintained all the design elements that are required per Douglas County with road design, with setbacks, with easement corridors that are associated in our property. We have one primary entrance, which is right here. We have an emergency access, which is non-gated. It will be paved. It is a paved access that can be used as a driveway or a drive-through. This is the primary cut that we'll have if we have a main cut with regards to any of the property that's out there. Everything else will be basically maintained upon the natural topography that's out there. We maintained our corridors through all of our studies with regards to our habitat corridors to allow our corridors as best as that we possibly can. Like I talked about earlier, we did find that archaeological piece that was out there and gave that in. We took into consideration as we were laying everything out our view shed corridors. We took into consideration our neighbors in the pinery to look to see what would they see when they're sitting in their home. This is a representation of the view shed corridor and the distance between our homes and their homes. And in red is if you were in this home right here, this is what you would see. This is the natural area that you would see. This is from the Pinery again. We looked at the density and looked back in to see what you could see. So you could see that they can't even see above the ridge line. So they really wouldn't even be able to see any homes in this area. Same thing from the subdivision to the west of us. This is their viewshed corridor. So they'd pick up 3 or 4 homes, maybe 5 at the maximum. And then we took another view from this position here in the Pinery looking back. And it's because the natural topography, as you see here, rises so quickly that we can't see over and above that with regards to our entire area. That's about what I have.
Well, outstanding, and our regards. Heart attacks are serious issues, and certainly thinking and praying about him for sure.
Thank you very much.
Any questions for the applicant?
Thank you for this presentation. When I was reading through the packet, there were several neighbors that had complained. There seemed to be some belief that this was always supposed to be open space and never supposed to be developed. Have you had any outreach with those neighbors?
Yeah, we've had multiple outreaches. Even this last round, we've had 3 neighborhood outreach programs with regards to whether it was the surrounding neighborhoods or just people in general in Colorado Golf Club to talk about that. It's always been a privately held piece of property, so it was never publicly held as open space.
As a county commissioner, I know the county never owned that and it never was open space, but there seemed to be.
Mr. Galbraith's been paying the taxes on it, so
Sure.
he'll tell you the same thing, so yeah.
There just seemed to be people who, for some reason, had this belief that it was always going to be open space. So do you have any idea where that came from? Okay, thank you. I have no other questions for you.
Thank you, Commissioner Thomas. And again, for the applicant, before we move on, let me just confirm that you're okay with the 5 conditions as presented? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Teal?
No questions.
Okay, well, I have no questions either. With that, we'll open it up for any citizen comment. Is there any citizen comment in the room with regard to this item? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Bill Blattman. I'm a resident of the Pinery. I've got some pictures I'd like to, or a picture, a couple versions of it that I'd like to share. Can I bring this up to you guys?
You know, if you want to present it to our county attorney, he can label it as an exhibit.
So I've been a resident of the Pinery for about 28 years. And I've seen a fair amount of development up in the section of the Pinery that I live in. I just want to state my opposition to this development and address what I think is a current troubling trend in this area to develop. I'm going to call it open space because that's how we all viewed it for 20 years that I've been there. But to develop in negative conflict, with what I call the Douglas County mission. Thanks for taking a look at that picture. That picture was taken of the development from Betts Ranch Road into the development. As you can see, there's some wildlife there. It pretty well captures the essence of the land in question here and what Douglas County has committed to protecting. I say that because while it's obviously been privately owned, it's been viewed as open space and a common use area, particularly for the animals. Again, that picture has an example of the wildlife that is in the area. There's quite a bit of wildlife in the area that passes through there. In fact, a bear and a cub passed through there last week, and some of you may have seen it and made some of the local news outlets. If this land gets developed, and it's already extending essentially from Colorado Golf Club, as the developers have mentioned, it's going to appear the same way. It is going to greatly diminish wildlife activity, and it's likely going to disappear from the area. And again, it's the rural nature, and again, the developers mentioned the rural nature of the development. It's tough for me to consider that actually rural. I also just wanted to remind all that there was a survey commissioned by Douglas County that found that 98% of respondents believe that protecting and preserving natural land and wildlife is important. That is, again, a survey commissioned by Douglas County. So I understand that a wildlife biologist has, but was hard to assess the impact of the development. I'd like to know who that wildlife biologist is, who hired them, and what were the findings of the wildlife biologist. I'm assuming that's in the hands of the development organization, but I don't know that. And I think my time's up.
Thank you, sir. Additional citizen comment?
Is that a question that you can get answered?
You know, so procedurally, sir, what will happen is following citizen comment, we'll give the applicant an opportunity to respond, and of course, our county staff is always available to answer those questions.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
You bet, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jim Payne. I'm a new homeowner in Betts Ranch. So, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I apologize. I've had a pretty bad cough, so if I start coughing, forgive me. I'll get right back to it. I have a couple of items I'd like to mention. In the plan that is presented to you is different than what was presented to us. When Brad came to the Betts Lake HOA, he promised us no horses on the property at all. 0. And right there, it said there was going to be 1 horse for the smaller lots, 2 horses for the bigger lots. So you don't have the correct information in front of you to make the right decision. So he needs to resubmit that and change it so that you know what you're passing or not passing. So I feel that this is something that should be tabled until you get all the data, and then you can make a decision on that and hear from us again. So that's the key thing. There's also an equestrian center that is mentioned in there that has a maximum of 8 horses. So if he takes out all the other horses, is that going to be extended to those that equestrian center so now can have 16 or 20 or 25 horses? So we need clarity on that to know that if he's taking the horses out of the homes, that this still stays the same, or if there's a change, then we need to talk about that so that we can get clarification on how that's going to work. And I think that needs to be put down in the plan, in the drawings or whatever submittals that you have, so that it stays that way throughout the rest of the process. Number 2 is the this information is from a reliable source. So if you have questions on it, I'd be happy to provide the sources of that information once I speak with him. But I feel obligated to present it because he couldn't be here today. So I'll go quickly through this, but the original request of this approval was for 1,707 acre plan that provided 169 homes, and among other things, 670 acres of open space A to be kept in perpetuity. What we know as parcel 142, the Galbraith property, is located in open space A. It was approved in October of 2000. 2 years later, an amendment was under development. An amendment under development to incorporate numerous changes to the original development plan, changes intended to improve the golf course design, the entrances, better define the residential areas, and the working documents proudly proclaim that, and this is a quote from that, the greatest advantage of the new plan as presented is the expansion of the open space A from 670 acres to 900 acres, a 34% increase. In March 2005, that was passed, and a comment was included in there. It says the Douglas County Open Space and Natural Resource Division continues to support the application due to the quantity and quality of open space being protected. The presidents of the HOA communities that are adjacent to Butterfield, Pinery, and Hidden Village all were sent letters of support, and each included the same language. So this was designed, and it was given...
Sir, I just want to remind you, your time has expired.
Thank you, but I just got to finish this because this is really, really, really critical. This was given as open space for something else to happen. and now you're changing this thing that was given. Are you going to go back and change this thing too? Because it's not fair to just change part of what was appropriate, and they all agreed to it because they all said this was going to expand the open space. So everybody said, okay, great, well then go ahead with what you want to do as long as you're giving us this. Now this is being taken away for something else. So I think this is really important for you to understand how this process has happened over time. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hope your cough gets better. Any additional citizen comment?
I'm Mary Payne. I live at 8647 Eagle Moon Way with that gentleman right there. We have finite years left. We moved here 6 months ago thinking that we would have this beautiful vista for our remaining years. These parcels are going to be developed individually, which means that there'll be different builders over a time period of Lord knows how long. 10 years, 15 years, 18 years? How long will it take? It's not one builder that's going to do all these houses, such as Betts Lake, which we have experienced, and where we live now, in the Colorado Golf Club. So it's impacting a lot of people negatively. And I think that you've been hearing that from Pinery, from Hidden Village, from other people. And I don't understand why it's not being considered. So I would ask you to deny this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Additional citizen comment? Okay, not seeing any additional citizen comment in the room. Is there any citizen comment online?
Thank you, Commissioner. I have no online comment.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'll close citizen comment and give the applicant an opportunity to respond.
Hi, thanks. Address 3 points. The first, I'll start with horses first. So there's reference to HOH meetings. If you look at condition number 1 of this proposal, it's that the property be included in the Colorado Golf Club restricted covenants. So it will be subject to those covenants. So there's some discussion at a HOA covenant specific level about horses. But at this time, the request for the preliminary plan, the county documents, the subdivision here would be that, as we outline, that the 2.5 acre lots or more are horses. So just want to clear that up, that the reference there is on a private covenant, which is a condition of this application and isn't finalized yet, but will of course be addressed through that process. The wildlife, page 350 of your packet today is the wildlife study that shows, and importantly, you know, this site was designed as Brad discussed to meet the natural wildlife corridors, so that there's, you know, the conclusion here that this development can coexist with wildlife. Of course, the representation is not that all, you know, no wildlife habitat has changed in any sense. You're putting 22 houses there, but that the impacts there are satisfactory, of course. And lastly, for open space, we're proud, you know, that this preliminary plan will designate those tracks in a permanent open space easement. So there'll be 86 acres there that will, of course, then be in the permanent open space easement. So happy to answer any other questions that you have, but I think those address the 3 main points. Yeah, Commissioner.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant?
Just some clarification. So the Colorado Golf Club restricts horses, but yet you're going to have to follow those covenants, but you're asking for horses. Do I have that straight?
So there's an amendment process to those covenants, and right now, under their covenants, this property is identified as the equestrian center. So it, of course, permits horses. But the permitting horses on the individual lots is a matter that there has to be HOA, there has to be certain covenant approval to go forward with that. Yeah.
So you're saying you would have to get the HOA's approval to have horses on some of these 22 lots? Not all of the lots can have horses?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions?
No questions.
You know, I'm really I guess, sensitive and cognizant of our new neighbors. Welcome to Douglas County. We're very thankful you're here, and everybody's living to 105, so I think you have probably a lot more time than maybe you think, but you know far better than I. But that said, we really believe in Douglas County. It's a wonderful place to live and certainly retire. I want to be very clear about expectations around open space, and I think Commissioner Thomas raised that as an issue, and you clarified that. But can you speak to that again? Because I think in my 5 years of doing this here, and then my years on Planning Commission, when there's private property that's undeveloped, people often buy nearby thinking it's going to be open space forever. But if there's promises, covenants, any protections, some sort of promissory estoppel, reliance, I mean, can you speak to those issues as it relates to this property?
Yeah, of course. So this property was zoned in 2000 under the original PD. And it's been amended, now 9 times. We were in front of you for the 8th. And that was the zoning that changed this property from being an equestrian center, and really 1 residence to permitting 22 residences. So no, at that time, it wasn't encumbered by a conservation easement. It wasn't dedicated open space. So while it was vacant land, because it was proposed to be an equestrian center, there wasn't a designation of that at that time, right? So I think we all know, a realtor may tell you something when you go to buy a house. You may look out over something, but when it's held in private ownership and that zoning has been properly established, that there's, of course, from a legal perspective, the potential for that to change to whatever that zoning may be. In this case, it's been zoned for 22 residences since 2019.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Council. And I guess for staff, I'm trying to recall, so that was done in 2019, the rezone?
Matt Jakubowski for staff. Yes, the 8th Amendment was proposed 2017, I think late 2017, and then ended up going to the board in 2019 and was approved in 2019.
Okay. Well, that's not the reason we're here today. I want to stay within the lane and scope for which the applicant has presented today's presentation. But I do, as a general matter, I always am a little bit concerned when there are rezonings made and, residents rely to their detriment potentially upon expectations that they got when they originally purchased the property. I'd be curious to know the basis and rationale for the rezone, but oftentimes it's in review of characteristics of a neighborhood that have changed and issues related to our comprehensive master plan. So I don't want to go back several years and revisit that. That's not the purpose of today, but I do remain very sensitive to those issues for citizens. Additional, yes, Jeanette.
I did want to say, too, as part of that PD amendment, it did talk about the open space that would be committed with this project would be permanently protected through an easement. And as part of the subdivision, the county will get an open space easement over the open space tracts. So it will be much more difficult to change in the future. So we are adding that additional level of protection with this plat.
That's great. And did I hear 55% open space?
Correct.
So that's a really significant dedication, and perhaps that was part of the rationale. Additional commissioner comment? Questions?
I have none.
No
Okay.
additional questions.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
All right. I believe we've had citizen comments, so I'll bring it back to the board for any further discussion and or a motion.
I have a motion to approve Riata South Preliminary Plan Filing Number 1, 6th revision, because it does meet all of the approval criteria with 5 conditions as presented, project file SB 2021-048.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and second.
So we have a first and second on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion carries 3-0. With that, we'll move on to item 3C, which is a resolution vacating portions of Meridian Boulevard and Jamaica Street located in the northwest quarter of Section 11, Township 6 South, Range 67 West of the 6th Prime Meridian, Douglas County, Colorado. Heather Scott, Principal Planner, presenting for staff. Hi, Heather. Ma'am, unfortunately, you're out of order. We're conducting a live hearing right now. It's okay. But if you'd like to provide additional comment to staff, you're welcome to.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Heather Scott, representing Planning Services. The request before you today is a vacation of portion of intersection at Meridian Boulevard and Jamaica Street, project number SB 2020-069, and a replat of Meridian Office Park Filing 1, 36th Amendment, project number SB 2020-068. David Vasquez and Eric Hecox with Shea Properties representing the applicants. There are two requests, including a road vacation to vacate a portion of Meridian Boulevard and Jamaica Street rights-of-way after the intersection was redesigned and constructed, shifting Jamaica Street as the primary thoroughfare and having Meridian Boulevard intersect at 90 degrees. Meridian Boulevard and Jamaica Street rights-of-way were established by the Meridian Office Park, Filing 1, First Amendment Final Plat back in 1983. Once the road vacation is approved, the residual portions of the unused rights-of-way will be merged with the adjoining parcels and tracts as part of the concurrent replat application. The intent of Article 7B is to provide a review and approval process for various types of road vacation requests. In this case, a portion of Meridian Parkway and Meridian Boulevard and Jamaica Street was established by plat, but after the intersection was redesigned, there are residual portions of right-of-way no longer needed. The replat request is to merge the vacated portions of Meridian Boulevard and Jamaica Street rights-of-way into abutting lots and tracts and adjust lot configurations. The number of resulting lots will remain the same, 5 non-residential lots and 2 tracts. The roadway vacation and replat process begins with the submittal of applications, following a review period by referral agencies and courtesy notices to abutting landowners. Public notice for the right-of-way vacation is given for a public hearing before the Board of County Commissioners. During the referral period, AT&T indicated there could be a possible conflict with their long-line fiber optics lines located in the area. Lumen indicated that they have facilities within the existing right-of-way, and they were concerned about the right-of-way being vacated. The applicants worked directly with the utility companies and have provided utility easements as shown on the corresponding replat exhibit. Public Works Engineering requested a 15-foot utility easement to provide services to signalized intersection, which is also provided in the replat application. No public comments were received. The area of the right-of-way vacation and the replat is identified by the red star located within the Meridian Office Park, south of E470 and east of Interstate 25. The properties are zoned planned development. This aerial shows Jamaica Street running north-south There we go. Jamaica Street runs north-south here. And Meridian Boulevard is the loop road around this area. There are portions of Jamaica Street and Meridian Boulevard proposed to be vacated. They're shown in the blue area in the middle. The lots and tracts which are subject to the replat are indicated in the red. The final plat for Meridian Office Park, filing number 1, First Amendment, was approved by the Board of County Commissioners in 1983. There have been over 35 subsequent plats with this filing. Traffic patterns have shifted over the last 40-plus years, placing the primary traffic on Jamaica Street running north and south. In 2020 and 21, Public Works Engineering worked with the property owners to realign the intersection, shifting the primary movement north to south and realigning the eastbound portion of Meridian Boulevard to intersect at 90 degrees. As part of the redesigned intersection, the applicants provided additional right-of-way to the county via a warranty deed. The applicant is requesting that the residual portions of the rights-of-way be vacated and merged into the parcels adjacent to the recently constructed intersection. This slide shows the new lots and tracks following the vacation of the residual Meridian Boulevard and Jamaica Street right-of-way. The gray area reflects the realigned intersection. Tract A, which is up on the north side here, was established for drainage and contains the Cottonwood Creek 100-year floodplain limits. Tract B is this large area here. Also contains portions of the Cottonwood Creek and is home to the Meridian Golf Club. The non-residential lots surrounding the intersections are currently vacant. The replat will merge lots 1 through 3 in Block 19 into one lot, then create 2 lots up in Block 20 of the Meridian Office Park, filing 1 8th Amendment, and create 2 lots down south of the intersection from 1 lot in Block 28 of the Meridian Office Park, filing number 1 5th Amendment. The boundaries of the 2 tracks slightly adjusted as well. This view is looking north to the built intersection from Meridian Boulevard toward Jamaica Street. Meridian Boulevard makes a right turn and heads east from this intersection. This is looking west from Meridian Boulevard toward the constructed intersection. There are portions of the right-of-way to be vacated on both the north and the south side of Meridian Boulevard. This is looking south from Jamaica Street at the constructed intersection. There are portions of the right-of-way to be vacated on the east side of Jamaica Street. This is a list of approval standards for a road vacation and are discussed in detail in the staff report. This is a list of the approval standards for a replat and are discussed within the staff report. Staff has assessed both applications in accordance with Articles 7 and 7B of the subdivision resolution. For the first request, should the board find that the approval standards for the road vacation are met, the following proposed conditions should be considered for inclusion in the motion. Number 1, prior to recordation of the road vacation resolution, all minor technical corrections shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And 2, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representatives during the public hearing and/or agreed to in writing and included in the public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners in approving the application. Therefore, such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's full satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. And for the second request, should the board find that the approval standards of the replat are met, the following proposed conditions should be considered for inclusion in the motion. Condition 1, prior to recordation of the plat, technical corrections to the replat exhibit shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And number 2, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representatives during the public meeting and/or agreed to in writing and included in public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners in approving the application. Therefore, such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's full satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. The board shall evaluate the request, staff report, referral agency comments, and public testimony, and shall approve, conditionally approve, table for further study, or deny the request. 2 motions are necessary from the board, one for the right-of-way vacation case, number SB 2020-069, and then the replat, case number SB 2020-068. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available to take questions on the staff report. Otherwise, the applicants do have a presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Heather. Any questions for staff?
I have none.
No questions. Thanks, Heather.
And I have none either. I just want to clarify that items C and D were taken up together and we're doing two motions at the same time.
That is correct.
Thank you very much, and welcome to the applicant.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think presentation's getting switched over so that I can launch it here. But before I jump in, we've had a very long and informative afternoon. You guys are often asked to make very difficult decisions, so I just want to thank you for your service and all of the time and attention you give to all the citizens of Douglas County. It's not always easy, but you guys do a phenomenal job. Let me see if this is working here. I think we're set. So as was mentioned, my name is Eric Ecox. I work with Shea Properties. I have a very short presentation. I'll keep it brief today. With me today is David Vasquez, also with Shea Properties. He's the one that does all the heavy lifting on these types of applications. Also with me is Corey, who's here from our legal team. They're both here to help answer any questions that you may have. And we're really here for two reasons today. Of course, the ones that staff said in terms of getting approval on the two applications that are in front of you, but also we want to take some time and thank you for the successful reconfiguration of these two key intersections in Meridian. It was really done in a great partnership with the county, and I really want to spend some time thanking you and your staff for your cooperation. So I'm going to cover three things. First, I'd like to review the original transportation goals from the 2018 county-approved plan. Second, we'll talk about the successful completion of these two key intersections, and then I'll wrap it up with our request, which is the vacation of the old right-of-way and the approval of the new right-of-way through the replat. So let's start by taking a look at our original transportation goals for the new developments within Meridian. Here's just a reminder of where Meridian is located in Douglas County and the metro area. It is at the crossroads of E470 and I-25. It's in the heart of the Southeast Business Corridor. And given this location, it's a key player in the future of the area's business development and its transportation needs. When we came to you in 2018 and proposed a new mixed-use plan, we brought with it an important element of that plan, which was to reconfigure the two intersections that are shown here and are being talked about today. We knew that these would be key to improving the north-south traffic flow to and from the new developments that were planned within Meridian. Basically, what we wanted to do was work with the county to create a more seamless route that kept traffic off of I-25 and allowed a better access north-south through Meridian and through northern Douglas County. As we look at the progress made to date, we're now very happy to say that construction on both of these intersections has been completed, and the credit for that really goes to the county. We're very grateful for the role that the county played in leading and in completing the reconfigurations. Specifically, I'd like to mention two important points. The first is that your participation helped to leverage SPyMed funding, outside funding, that added to county and Metro District investments. This funded the intersection improvements in a three-way partnership between the county, the Metro District, and SPyMed. Second, we worked with county staff on the timing of repaving of Meridian Boulevard. This was a separate but very much related project, and it's the area that's shown here in the gold. Your acceleration of the key section between these two intersections was key to the project's success, and I again want to thank you and your staff for this partnership. So now let's take a closer look at these improvements. Looking first at Havana and Meridian, here you can see the old configuration. And here is the layout of the new flow. Our wonderful satellites up in space have not yet updated their imagery. I'm sure that will come in the next few nanoseconds. But this is an overhead view, and the next slide will more clearly show how the two sides of Havana flow more directly in and out of Marina. So by widening the east-west Havana access points and adding in traffic lights, there's now a much more controlled access in and out of Meridian. For this project, all utilities were within the existing right-of-way. I'll get to that and how it relates to the other project in just a minute. This intersection is now completed. It's fully open in a working condition, and the only thing that is remaining is the new landscaping, which will be completed this spring and over the summer. So moving on to Jamaica and Meridian intersection, here is the previous configuration, and if you look closely you can see it fade into the new configuration, and this is the construction that shows the much more direct traffic flow north and south. And unlike Havana, the utilities that are now not in the roadway and not in the right-of-way, and that's really why we're here today. This map shows you the existing right-of-way, which was structured around the old road configuration, and the new design raised the issues that Heather talked about in terms that we had to work through in terms of protecting the existing utilities. So the first obvious thing that we had to work through was that we didn't want, for budgetary reasons, we didn't want to move the utilities. We wanted to leave them in place. However, they fell outside of the new right-of-way, so we had to make sure that they were protected. The solution to this was to grant new easements to protect all of the existing utility lines, and these are now in place. As is mentioned in the staff report, all of the utility providers, except for CenturyLink, were okay with this. CenturyLink did not provide written approval. However, we've had multiple conversations with them, particularly their local representatives. They're fine with the solution that we've put in place. They just weren't able to get in a formal letter in time for this hearing. We've also spoken with them that if they need anything further or have other concerns, that we're prepared to continue to work with them. But as with all of the utilities in this area, they're now fully protected under an easement. So with the easements in place, now the final issue that remains is vacating the existing right-of-way and creating the new right-of-way to match the intersection. And as Heather mentioned, our replat as presented addresses this issue and spells out in detail the new configurations and brings us to the final step in this process, which is to respectfully request that you vacate the existing right-of-way and approve the replat with our proposed right-of-way and easements. I'll just wrap it up by summarizing some of the benefits of these new intersections. They obviously do what we had anticipated in the first place, which was a better north-south movement through Meridian. That's been particularly beneficial to some of the new housing that has come to the northern part of Douglas County. They also provide better access to recreational opportunities in the area. It gets individuals up to trails and open space and parks that are in the area and that they can use in a more seamless way. It will continue to contribute to the success of the mixed-use vision that we had in 2018 and help us continue to implement that. And then finally, all of these improvements work in concert with the studies that are going on at the Lincoln and I-25 interchange. They're compatible with the chosen alternative from that study, and including any early action projects that would happen on Lincoln. We're currently working with the project team to plan and implement these additional regional transportation improvements. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up with a very big sincere thanks for your ongoing partnership and participation in bringing a new energy to Meridian and northern Douglas County. And we respectfully ask for your approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And then for the two action items, are you okay with all the conditions as presented?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
I have none.
Great presentation, no questions.
Outstanding presentation. I have none either. So with that, I'll open it up for any citizen comment. Is there any citizen comment in the room with regard to this item? Not seeing anyone left after our long afternoon. I'll turn it back online. Troy, any citizen comment online?
Thank you, Commissioner. I have no online comment.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'll close citizen comment and bring it back to the board for any further discussion and or a motion.
Well, at the risk of adding levity after a long afternoon, who doesn't need a vacation if it pleases the board? I have a motion to approve a resolution vacating portions of Meridian Boulevard and Jamaica Street, located in the northwest quarter of Section 11, Township 6 South, Range 67, west of the 6th Principal Meridian, Douglas County, Colorado, because it does meet all the approved criteria with two conditions as presented. Project file SB 2020-069.
Second.
So there's a first and second on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion carries. Appreciate the levity, Commissioner Teal. Do we have another motion?
I have a motion to approve the Meridian Office Park Filing 136th Amendment replat because it does meet all of the approval criteria with two conditions as presented. Project file SB 2020-068.
Second.
So we have a first and second on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Aye, and that motion carries 3-0. So the next land use meeting and public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 2:30 p.m. We are adjourned.